近年来，全球市场对战后女性艺术大师的关注达到了前所未有的高度。众多藏家与机构开始聚焦那些曾被低估的女性抽象画家。Deborah Remington 便是其中一位。她的创作风格独特，难以归类，不仅挑战了当时的绘画主流，更预示了未来科技美学的萌芽。随着市场对女性艺术家的重新审视 ，Remington 的作品已被全球50多家重要博物馆收藏。且在一级市场上愈加稀缺，被视为极具上升潜力的艺术资产。本期视频带你走进纽约蓝筹画廊 Bortolami， 深入了解 Remington 各个时期的代表作，盘点值得收藏的投资级佳作。I'm delighted to introduce you to Evan Reiser, Director of Bortolami Gallery, to guide us through this special exhibition. Evan, it's a pleasure to be here with you today. And before we dive into this exhibition, could you share some background about the gallery?
Absolutely, and thank you so much, Karen. It's such a pleasure to have you here at Bortolami. The gallery began in 2005. Stefania Bortolami opened it in Chelsea, and we've now been here in Tribeca since 2017. And this is actually our second exhibition with Deborah Remington.
I know this exhibition highlights 3 significant phases of her career, featuring works ranging from her most iconic compositions to rare, ever-before-seen paintings. At the heart of this exhibition is this masterpiece, which was made in the 1960s.
Yeah, it's a very important painting in Deborah's career. Deborah actually began as an abstract expressionist in San Francisco in the 1950s. This painting is from 1969. So in between these paintings she was making in the 50s, where you have very thick impasto oil paint, she really transitioned to the style of painting where you don't see any brushstroke at all. It's completely flat surface, a very illusionistic surface at which in the center we have this kind of mirror-like shaped mirror object. She was known for painting mirror imagery in her work, but it was always this kind of blank, non-reflective space. This was actually shown in really famous group exhibition at Fondation Met in Saint-Paul-de-Vence in southern France, with so many luminaries of American painting at the time: Richard Diebenkorn, Ellsworth Kelly, Philip Guston, Mark Rothko. So Deborah's inclusion in that show was really important at the beginning stages of her career.
Exactly. I think what sets her apart is her distinctive blend of geometric abstraction and surrealism. Unlike many American abstract expressionists like Pollock or de Kooning, her compositions are meticulously structured with hard edges, interlocking shapes, metallic jewel-like hues that evoke a sense of futuristic vision.
So this is a painting of Deborah Remington from 1986. And it comes at this very critical juncture in her career. She had just had a museum retrospective of the hard edge paintings that she had been making from 1963 to 1983. She took a few years off and came back with this exhibition at Jack Shaman when he was in the East Village in New York. And she returned to this expressionistic style of painting that she had kind of pioneered in San Francisco in the 1950s. There is a huge influence of Japanese and Chinese calligraphy on her practice. She had studied that when she was living in Asia for 2 years in the late 1950s. And she actually came back to San Francisco and began to teach it. And I think you can see aspects of that in this painting, this appreciation of different tonalities of black and white and gray. She used to say, you know, there's so much color in the black, there's so much color in the white, and talk about the kind of implied color that you see in some Chinese painting.
Yeah, what I also like about her work is that her work always occupies an ambiguous space. Her forms imply movements and depths without resolving into identifiable objects, creating an interesting psychological tension and suggesting a personal mythology or invented symbolism, which really distinguishes her from the emotionally driven or purely formal approaches of her contemporaries. This is such a museum-quality work, and I think it embodies both continuity and transformation in her work.
Yeah, it's an incredible end chapter to Deborah Remington's career. This painting was made in 2007. She died 2.5 years after this was made. It's the last painting she finished. It's the last painting she started. And it's so incredible that it kind of encompasses all these different eras of her painting. You have abstract expressionist beginnings, you have elements of the hard edge period that she became so well known for, and the color palette, which she really maintained from the 1960s to this painting, which was her very last. And again, this really saturated, pure red, blue, green color that you see throughout her work.
As we walk through this exhibition, it becomes evident that in the 80s and 90s, her work underwent significant evolution while preserving key elements from her earlier career.
I think if you look at all of her work, if you look at the entire body of work, what it really becomes is fascination with painting objects and forms, emerging out of darkness and into the light.
Yes.
And the remarkable thing about all of her work is this incredible luminosity. And when I had first seen an image of this work, I said, oh, it's so dark. And then, as I stood before it, it really floored me because the intensity of the whites, the purity of the color, this very intense cadmium red and blue, it almost seems as though she's kind of crumpled up some of the shapes from her earlier paintings and she's painted it in space. There's this kind of compression of form that goes from the bottom of the composition and kind of elevates your eye upward.
Deborah Remington was historically undervalued, partly due to her divergence from dominant narratives and being overshadowed by male peers in the New York art scene.
It's true that Deborah's work was really undervalued at different points in her career. In the 1970s, she showed at the famous Bikert Gallery, which was a gallery of Chuck Close and Bryce Martin. They also showed Dorothea Rockburn, but it was a primarily male artist roster. A lot of those artists became very canonical art historical figures in New York School of Painting. Deborah, however, kind of faded in and out of the spotlight. This painting was made in the 1990s when painting was kind of at a low point in popularity. I think what she was doing did not have to do as much with what other artists were concerned with at the time. But it is a remarkable painting. It's never been exhibited before, and we're really privileged to be able to show it.
Exactly. I think her style is so unique, which made it difficult to categorize, limiting her market presence in her time. But recently, efforts to reassess overlooked female artists, especially in abstraction, have renewed interest in her contributions as collectors and museums seek to diversify or fill gaps in their collections. Her work is increasingly recognized as undervalued asset with strong potential for appreciation.
Recently, other museums have been acquiring her works the last few years, and I think there's a very bright future ahead. There's a museum retrospective which will be opening very soon at the Phoenix Art Museum in southwestern US, and they plan to travel the show.
Thank you, Evan, for sharing your insight.
Oh my goodness, thank you so much, Karen. It's been such a pleasure having you here and speaking about Deborah's work.
那我们今天的画廊私访就先到这里。如果你想要收藏视频中介绍的藏品，可以在视频下方找到我们的联系方式。如果你喜欢本期的视频，别忘了点赞、评论、收藏、转发。我们下期见啦！